May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitation of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Suzanne Suarez Hurley. Now, if you knew her at Zen Center years ago, you would have known her as Suzanne Suarez. But then she became Suzanne Hurley. So she's Suzanne Suarez Hurley, but now she's going to go back to her maiden name, Suzanne Suarez Hurley. Oh, and she was just telling me that she's discovered that's a Jewish Spanish name. I do not believe she's Jewish, but she's not. But she thought that was neat. She's living in Florida now. She spent a lot of time in Florida. She came to Zen Center in 1975 and was around Zen Center for a number of years. And Richard Baker gave his blessing to her starting a Zen group in Florida, which she had for some time. But before she came to Zen Center, she was one of the founders of The Farm. Steve Gaskin is The Farm, and was an early follower of Steve Gaskin, and she talks about that. And then from there, she went to the Minnesota Zen Center and was there with Dainin Katagiri, and she talks about that. And, in Florida, she became a lawyer. She didn't get at that until the very end. Oh, by the way, like 30 years she was a lawyer, and she basically helped midwives. But she'll get into that. She wrote a piece about it that was published by Yale called Midwifery is Not the Practice of Medicine. It was published by Yale in 1993, and apparently it can be accessed there and was read widely. And then as a result of that, she was going around meeting with groups, speaking and stuff. Anyway, so that gives you a rough idea. So look, just as soon as we've had our pause to meditate, let's give her a call. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever. And we'll give Suzanne Suarez Hurley a call.
Hello.
Hi, Suzanne. This is David Chadwick.
Hey, David. How are you?
Okay, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
You don't mind if I call you a little early, do you?
No, we just, we're just cleaning up here. We just had a little dinner together, and I was expecting your call in a few minutes, but now it's fine.
Okay, good. Well, so, where are you and what are you up to?
I live in Asheville, but I've recently gotten together with an old friend of mine who I've known for 50 years, and we're partnered up, and so I'm at his place right now in North Florida, near the Swanee River, and then we go back to Asheville, where I live. So we kind of go
Asheville,
back and forth.
what state is that in?
That's North Carolina.
Oh, all right, yeah, right.
It's a very progressive town, Asheville. There's a lot of activity. There are lots of people there from everywhere. It's a lot of New Yorkers there, and it's more like San Francisco than any place else in the South, probably. Except it's not a big city. It's a small city.
You said you're near the Swanee River.
Well, that's where Doug lives in North Florida.
Is that the Swanee River from the song?
It is.
We're
800 feet from the Swanee River.
So where does the Swanee, is it in any other southern states?
It starts in Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ends here in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. So who's your friend?
His name's Doug Cobb. He's another person that I was a founder of the farm in Tennessee with Stephen Gaskin, as you may know.
Yeah.
I lived in the Haight-Ashbury in '69, and I used to go to that big class called Monday Night Class out at the Family Dog. I don't know if you ever went to that, but there were 1,000 people there every Monday night, and it was a very unusual class to go to because it wasn't really like anything else that I'd ever seen anyway. So many people there just interested in, usually a huge crowd of people interested in trying to figure out what to do with our lives, make the world a better place, and all those kind of very idealistic things that we did back then.
Yeah, 1,000 people. Wow, I didn't realize that.
You know, all the old bands played there. The Grateful Dead played there. It's a Beautiful Day, close to the Cliff House and the right around from Citro Park. It was just south of there, and then it was inland. They had a parking lot in front of that place that could have held 1,000 cars. It was a huge parking lot, and the place itself held a lot of people because Stephen Gaskin would pack it. I mean, it was unbelievable. So it was really, you know, we all sat down, and he'd have the whole group chant Om for about 20 minutes, and it would rise and rise and rise, and just you'd get lost in the sound of it, this roaring sound that would just fill you up with energy. And then we'd stop chanting, and then it would get quiet, and he would start his class by just, you know, talking about something that was a political thing that was happening in our country or in the city or something unique. And then people would make comments, and people were there from all over the world. So it was a great place to learn what was going on because people participated.
Yeah. That's neat. It was the Avalon Ballroom is where it was.
No, it was the Family Dog, but it might have been at he started at that church in San Francisco that was a Methodist church. I can't think of the name.
So Chet Helms founded the Avalon Ballroom, and that's where the bands played. But you're saying Family Dog was a different place.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Stephen Gaskin started out at a small place, and then he went to the Straight Theater on Haight Street. You remember Straight Theater?
Oh, I do.
STRAIGHT comes straight down on the road.
Yeah.
Well, I watched that thing down. But he used to have his class there, and then it got too big to have there, so he moved it out to the Family Dog, which was a huge, big rock and roll hall, so that 1,000 people could stuff themselves in there for the class. And at the very same time, I was living on Oak Street with a half a block from Stanyon, right close to Golden Gate Park, and my roommate was Lynn Hesselbart, Lynn Henley is her name now. And Lynn came down to the Zen Center, and then she brought me down to the Zen Center to see Suzuki Roshi. And I got very interested in him and his teachings. I was real into his teachings, along with, of course, we all went to see Trungpa and when he was around. And so I went to all of Trungpa's lectures and was very interested in Suzuki Roshi at the same time. I was 20 or 21 years old.
What year was that?
69.
Mm-hmm. And why were you impressed with him?
With Suzuki Roshi?
Yeah.
Oh, well, his book came out in 70, and I had never read anything like that. And I thought it really spoke to me and helped me kind of understand myself better.
Uh-huh.
And I felt like that was an incredible book that I didn't want to let go of. And I just read it over and over. And when I left with Gaskin on the caravan, I was living on a bus for 2 years. A lot of people on our bus trip had pictures of Suzuki Roshi on their buses. Lots of people were Shunryu Suzuki because of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and I was one of them.
Yeah, but you said that Len Hasselbart took you to hear him or something, right?
Yes. At Zen
and
Center.
then you said you were impressed with him or something then when you actually heard him. And
I was impressed with him, but I think I was impressed with him because I had already read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, or I think I had. Maybe not. I don't.
Well, wait a minute. If you Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind came out in 1970, and you said she took you there in 1969.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I heard him talk, but it's been so long I don't recall, a lot other than I wasn't used to being around a teacher like that. I thought he was really unique.
What was unique about him?
The fact that he, looked like I'd never seen a Zen master, bald head, and that he spoke so carefully, and he spoke slowly and carefully. And the other thing unique was he drew a lot of people. It was packed when I went there. So it made me more interested to know why all these people were interested in him. So that's why I started studying Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind more carefully, and felt like it was one of the most, if not the most important spiritual book I'd ever gotten my hands on.
And all right, so what happened next?
Well, Stephen Gaskin was going to go on that trip around the country, and his idea was to basically the idea was that was when people that were progressive were turning kind of violent. It was Kent State happened right around that time.
Yeah, but the progressive people weren't violent at Kent State. It was the National Guard. Right,
but some people around the country were trying to act out in a more violent way, acting back,
Yeah, but not at Kent State.
No, but that was the beginning of that change, I believe. So, part of our trip around the country was to quell the tide of anybody wanting to be violent, because we felt like that being peaceful and changing our lifestyle was important for the country and for ourselves.
Well, the violence, the thing is that there were some people where there would be a demonstration, say, that would get all worked up and start throwing things. There were some in the Weather Underground and stuff that were advocating violence, but there was very, very little violence. What happened is that anything violent would make the news, and peaceful protest wasn't as newsworthy. So I'd say the violence was almost entirely coming from the government.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I personally didn't see a lot of violence, partly because I came from Florida. I mean, I came from Florida by myself to San Francisco and just landed in the city. It was I had a bad experience with a violent stepfather, and I basically escaped at 19, and I took a bus from Valdosta, Georgia, which is just at North Florida. That's the border of Florida and Georgia. I took a bus to Chicago, and then a train from Chicago all the way to Spokane, Washington. Stayed with some friends for a few days, and then took a bus down into San Francisco and landed in the bus station 10 o'clock at night, not knowing where I was going. I had one friend in the city. I had no idea how to get there. And it was 10 p.m. and I didn't know where I was going for the night or how to get there or how to use any public transportation. And a police officer came over and said, "Do you know where you're going?" I said, "No." He goes, "Let me see the address." And he goes, "Oh, that's in the Mission. I'm going to be heading that way, so I'll give you a ride."
Oh.
So he gave me a ride to this place. And so he stopped, and I go up to the door, and I knocked on the door, and this guy comes, and he opens the door, and all this marijuana smoke comes bubbling out the door, just busting out the door. All this marijuana smoke comes out, and the cop goes, "Have fun," and drives away.
That's great. That's great.
And the guy says, "Oh, yes, your friend lives here. He's not here right now, but he's the fourth door on the left. You can stay there." So that's how I first got to the city. It was pretty wild.
What year? And, what year was that?
69.
Oh, same year.
Yeah. Yeah, I moved over to Oak Street, and there were about 8 different people that shared a bathroom and a kitchen, and Lynn Hesselbart was one of them. So that's how I knew her, and so she had a bad experience. I think she actually went through some bad experience in Golden Gate Park, and she decided she'd find some kind of spiritual thing to do, and so then she found Zen Center, and then she took me to Zen Center, and that's how I got to see Suzuki Roshi for the first time.
How did you learn about Stephen Gaskin?
Well, when I was living in my apartment on Oak Street, people had different things that were going on different times. I don't know if you recall, but of course that was 2 blocks over from Haight Street and about a half a block from Golden Gate Park. So on the Sundays, the Krishnas would feed people in long, long lines out in the park.
Right.
And there were different things that happened in different days. So I said, "Well, what do you do on Monday nights?" And they said, "Well, there's something called Monday night class." And I said, "Well, how do you get there?" "Just go out front and stick out your thumb. Everybody's going." And so I went out to the apartment. I stuck out my thumb. The first car that came along said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Monday night class." "We are too. Jump in."
Wow.
So that's how I got there.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I was living in Tassajara then. And I don't remember meeting Steve Gaskin or going to any of his classes, but I certainly heard about him. And he came to he would bring students to listen to Suzuki Roshi talk sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did. Yeah, when I lived at Tassajara, he and the farm band, they were traveling around the country, and Stephen came to Tassajara, and I walked him around and showed him around Tassajara, and that was real fun.
When was that?
Let's see. I say 75 or 76.
75, I was the director until the fall. And then at Tassajara, I was the director in the spring. And from 74 fall, I was director of Tassajara for a year.
That's amazing.
So
I was there for, go ahead.
So were you there when I was director?
Not that I can recall. I must have come right after that.
Yeah.
Steve Weintraub, one of the head monks, and then Philip Whalen after him. So I was there for those 2 practice periods, and then I was there for a summer also.
Uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. Phil, that could have, Philip moved there in this fall of 72.
Huh.
And Steve wasn't there. Ooh, maybe, God, I can't remember. Maybe he was there 74, 75. But anyway, so I did not know this. So Steve Gaskin came. Wow.
Well, he came during the summer when I was, you know how summer is at Tassajara. You just have a more of a work schedule, and then guests come, and then we still have zazen, but it's not as strict of a schedule.
Right.
So I was in charge of the baths and at Tassajara, and I remember knowing Philip. I thought he was just hilarious. He would do the funniest things, even little things that he did were just hilarious. I just thought he was great. And then my assignment for the summer at Tassajara was to clean the baths on the women's side. And one time I was in there and I was cleaning the baths, and because it's way back in the mountains, it wasn't in the middle of the camp or in the middle of the monastery or anything. So I'm way back, and so I'm singing and cleaning, and somebody comes behind me and they're making fun of me, and I thought, what the heck? I turned around, it was Joan Baez.
Oh, yeah.
She thought that was really funny because she was making fun of me and walking toward me, coming into the baths at an odd hour. And so it was really fun to, she thought it was just really funny. So I really been embarrassing kind of to me at the time. But it was such a beautiful place to get to live, and such a wonderful experience to live in the monastery. I'm still in touch with a lot of people from then.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, that's neat. Well, I see you were at Tassajara in the spring of 76. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you weren't there before that.
I was Barbara Labansky, Barbara Winger was there when I was, and Carolyn Atherton, and they were my two best friends. But Robert Anderson was there too, and we had a very interesting group of people, very a mix of people from just about everywhere. It was a wonderful experience. Something I'll never really forget. I mean, I'd never been to, a place like that.
Let's go back to you're going with Gaskin. At what point did you all leave? At what point did you get so involved that you went with the caravan? That eventually found Tennessee.
That was 1970, and we traveled in something like 45 states. And
is that right?
Stephen did talks at all those places. And so we were in all these different places, meeting all these different people. A lot of people just dropped what they were doing and came with us. And so we started out with about 21 vehicles and ended up with a couple hundred.
Is that right?
Around the country, came back into San Francisco after traveling around the country, and the whole city came out for us. They were all out in the streets waving, and all of our buses were passing by, and we were waving at people. It was quite an experience. It was quite a scene, really.
Was that still 1970, or was that later?
That was at least a year later. 71.
Far out. I was in Tassajara then too, so I missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
That's neat. But
it was.
So you were back in San Francisco, but
back in.
What happened then?
Well, Stephen Gaskin wanted to form a community since we had become kind of a traveling community together. He would talk in different places. He always considered Shunryu Suzuki to be his teacher, but he didn't practice at Zen Center as far as I know. I don't believe he did.
No,
But he
I
thought,
don't think so.
yeah, no. But he really taught all of us that Suzuki Roshi was the finest teacher that had ever come to this country. And so when I was, because of my past, which was kind of a violent past when I was a child and growing up, I just felt like living on the farm once we formed that community. I just felt like I needed to have more structure to be able to work stuff out for myself mentally and after what I'd been through as a child. So I had read Suzuki Roshi and I wanted to go and live in a monastery. So one of my friends was up in Minnesota and she was practicing Zazen with Katagiri Roshi. And she said, well, come up here. There's a Roshi here from Japan. And so I did. And that was, when was that, Doug, you know? That would have been
early 76 or early
75, we think. And anyway, so I went to Minnesota and I lived across the street from Katagiri and Tomoe and their two boys. And I got to know Katagiri really well. I felt very close to him. But I told him I want to go live in the monastery. And he never told me a good idea, a bad idea, or anything. He never said anything about it at all. He just listened carefully. And I felt he was a wonderful teacher. And I loved the way he handled the Zen Center there. And just his whole manner, everything about him, I just thought was wonderful. And then at some point about maybe 8 months after I'd been practicing with him, or 8 or 9 months, I said, well, I want to go live in the monastery. And so I'm going to go to San Francisco. And for some reason, I thought maybe he would call out there for me and say I was coming. But I don't believe he did, because when I got to San Francisco, I got to San Francisco and the priest asked me, well, why are you here? And I said, to go live in the monastery. And they just looked at me kind of funny and they said, well, you'll have to stay here and practice with us for at least several months before you can go. And I said, great. And then the very next morning, they called me and said, ready to go?
Oh, is that right? Is that right?
Yes.
Then,
yes,
well, then maybe somebody remembered you or knew you had a history,
I
or
don't
something.
know. I really don't know. I never could figure that out.
All right. Was that summer? Was that summer during the guest season?
When I first went?
Yeah. When they said, are you ready? Are you ready to go?
To go. I think it was ready at the beginning of the fall practice period.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, I believe it was, because I went down for the fall practice period and lived at Tassel Harbor.
That sounds like 75 fall practice period.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Far out. Well, Katagiri wouldn't have called ahead, and you would have had to talk to him about it and arrange that. You couldn't just expect. I mean, he wouldn't do that without.
No. No, but I didn't know how things worked. I had just been sitting with him for a few months, and so
yeah,
But it was enough it made me think, well, he's so wonderful. I wonder what Zen Center is like. And I was interested in the monastery because I wanted to have I didn't know what I was getting into at all, but I thought there must be some structure. And there sure was lots of structure, which was just what I needed.
And
well as very interesting people, of course, too.
Yeah. Why did you need structure?
Well, I thought that would be the way that I could work on myself. And I felt like I had some things to work on in my mind because I had been, like I said, I'd been through a lot of violent abuse as a child.
Yeah.
And so that would, it drove me crazy, kind of, just not ever able to resolve it or feel comfortable about what had happened. So I went to the monastery to try to work things out with myself. And I felt like I'd have some kind of structure and assistance from the teachers there.
And who were the teachers there?
Well, Richard Baker.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed him very much. I had a very good relationship with him. And I thought that he was really helpful, and I really appreciated him. But also, like I said, Steve Weintraub, who was one of the he was the head monk at some point there. I think it was the first practice period back. And then Philip, who was also right after him. And I liked both of them very much. But just all the people there were wonderful to be around. I felt really blessed, or if that's the best word to use, honored, and appreciated being able to live in that type of environment. And it's not to mention the fact that it was one of the most beautiful places I've ever been on earth.
Yeah.
I mean, such a gorgeous place to be, and so far away, and just having, not having TV and not having radio and not having all the distractions of life that we generally live with. So being in that circumstance, I had just a really good experience with lots of meditation.
Yeah. And so how long were you there?
I believe I was there for 2 years, but it could have been shorter. I don't recall exactly. Because
You told me 6 months in Minnesota and a year.
I think I'm not sure. I came back. A bunch of us left at the same time. I think. I wish I could remember the dates, but we all went. A lot of us that had been living there for at least a year or more. We all went back at the same time, and I moved into. First, I lived at Zen Center, and I was living upstairs in Zen Center, and then I moved into an apartment up the street, and lived right next door to Peter Coyote and Marilyn. I don't remember Marilyn's last name, but she was his wife, and she had lived with us at Tassajara. Lived up the street.
Marilyn McCann.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so she, I had known her pretty well at Tassajara, so it was nice to live next door to her and Peter. That was real fun. And also I continued my practice, and I think Michael Winger and Barbara were living. Anyway, I got to know Barbara Winger was one of my best friends, and still is. California.
Now, while you were at Tassajara, you got into copying Suzuki's lectures.
That's one of the big reasons I wanted to go there too. Actually, I had gotten so interested in Suzuki Roshi that I wanted to see if there was anything that hadn't been published that I hadn't read. So they did have unpublished lectures, and I read all of them.
Not only did you read them, you wrote them down.
I copied them. Mm-hmm.
Do you know how?
I did.
It was a lot. It was a lot because I've got them, and we went over them very carefully to see if there was anything there that wasn't in the archive.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite a lot. You wrote, I don't know. It was like 100 lectures or something. I don't know how many.
That's what I did. I did that every day. And I got a lot out of it because writing it made me pay more attention to what he was saying.
Oh,
so
definitely.
With it big time. And so that was really helpful to be able to have the time, which I had living in the monastery, to write his lectures out for myself on paper. I also, you know how at Tassajara you have to get permission as to what you're going to study. So I had permission to study Shunryu Suzuki and Mahatma Gandhi. So I spent time doing both at the time back then.
I never heard of having to get permission to study something.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we were asked what we planned on. I forget how that went down, but my recollection was I had to say what I wanted to study to somebody. Who it was.
Well, things got more organized in time. As Zen Center evolved, it got more organized like that. In the Suzuki era, it was much more. It was unformed. A lot of it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, things got codified a lot more, and like Suzuki's Zazen instruction, you know, it would take 1 minute, and you know, just sit there and you know, he was concerned about the posture.
Right. Well,
And then he and Katagiri both. They'd say, Katagiri, they would give it and say, you know, you just sit and they'd say, you know, just follow your breath. And then somebody would ask for more, and wouldn't, you know, wouldn't necessarily say anything.
That's right. But yeah, Katagiri would walk around the room with his Zen stick and just come behind people and press on their back in a certain spot so that they would straighten right up.
Yeah,
and I thought that was really
that's good.
I liked that a lot.
Yeah, I remember that. That's true. And Suzuki would walk around and straighten people, and he would put his stick like in the lower back.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I remember that very well. And so yeah, it was a wonderful experience at Tassajara. And Richard Baker, I got pretty close to him, and I liked him as a teacher. And he told me that he wanted me to go back to the East Coast. And he said specifically, I thought I was going to go back to the farm. He wanted me to try to teach Zazen on the farm, but I didn't really go back to the farm. So I opened a Zen Center in Tampa, where I was living.
I remember.
Yeah.
Yes. I forgot about that. Yeah.
That was challenging. And so what I did was I how did I do this? I can't remember I ended up having Mel Weitzman as a teacher, and Mel would let me call him, because here I was, you know, thousands of miles away from Zen Center, trying to run a Zen Center without having ever done anything like that. And, you know, people come into these places that are kind of weird and have weird things going on in their lives. And I wasn't a psychotherapist or anything, and I wouldn't know what to do. So I called Mel up and, what do I do? And he would help me. He would guide me, you know, and sometimes he would reprimand me, and I'd say, well, he'd ask me, I'd tell him I had a priest one time from another lineage, and well, he'd say, well, what lineage was it? And I'd say, I don't know. He'd go, well, you should. And he was wonderful like that. He just brought me up to where I needed to be, you know, kind of the director of a Zen Center. I wasn't prepared for that, I didn't think. And, but I ended up having a nice group in Tampa, for 10 years.
Yeah. Did you get ordained?
I was lay ordained at Jukai. I never was ordained priest, but, yeah, I didn't have the opportunities to go further. I went back to Tennessee, to the farm after living at Tassajara. And immediately, I was asked by Ina Mae Gaskin, who was Stephen Gaskin's wife. The farm had opened a center down in Guatemala to serve the Mayan Indians. And so when I came back from Tassajara, she immediately sent me there to go work with the Mayans in Guatemala. So that was another amazing experience.
Wow.
So
How long were you there?
Well, that was only for less than 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a wonderful 6 months. I mean, I had never been in a country like that.
Wow.
Never seen. Yeah.
Wow. Now, when you were one of the founders of the farm, and you've talked about Stephen Gaskin's caravan around the country.
Right.
But what about when was it decided to go to Tennessee? How did that come about?
What happened was we were traveling. We ended up being kind of a traveling village with a bunch of different buses, going from town to town, and the national media picked up on us and put us on TV. So as we went toward the, well, let me see, I should step back a little. We traveled around the country going to all these different cities, and we came back to San Francisco for a couple of weeks, and then we had become kind of a traveling village. And so Stephen said, well, we're going to head out and find land and start a community. So everybody got their buses back together and headed out toward Tennessee. We got to Tennessee and we stayed at a location close to Nashville. It was kind of a park, big park. And then some of our musicians in our group went to Nashville and met this woman in a guitar store and told her we were looking for property and who we were and that kind of thing. And she said, well, I've got 1,000 acres down south of Nashville, about an hour and a half south. So you can have it for $1 a year. So our whole community all of our buses moved onto her property. And we were real careful to protect the rivers and all the things like that when we moved on. And we were all living in buses. And after a few months that we were there, some land right next door came up for sale. And so our community bought 1,000 acres, or 750 to start with, or 760, something like that. And ended up, how much? 1750. And ended up the land that the farm ended up owning was about 1,700 acres.
Mm.
So the farm was really big.
Mm, wow.
Stephen Gaskin was always considered himself Suzuki Roshi's student, and so he would quote Suzuki Roshi in some of his talks to our group in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like Zen Center. I mean, it wasn't anything like Zen Center.
Right.
Much more casual, you could say.
Right.
Yeah.
You remember Bruce Fortin?
Oh yeah, of course.
Bruce said Bruce was Gaskin's lawyer. He did the he did the legal work for him there.
Well, actually, he was the lawyer for the community at the time. Bruce was.
He said
I ran into him at Zen Center. We both had our rock suits on, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we both were like, "Wow."
But, yeah, he came to Zen Center in 73. No, 73. Yeah.
That's 2 years before I did. That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew he was there, but I never really got to see him except one time at Zen Center when we ran into each other.
Yeah.
And that was very fun.
Yeah, and he would talk to me about the farm. He and I worked together at Green Gulch, and he said the practice at the farm was to smoke pot and talk, to work things out by talking, and to get to the bottom of who you were and all that. At some point, I think that stopped smoking pot there. Is that right?
No. What really went on was Stephen was into the working it out thing, and not as much into like Zen Center would do, where you really have to have some personal, unless you're really a bad actor or need to be talked to for some reason that would be disruptive, you're there on your own figuring things out. And Doug is reminding me that Stephen talked about energy a lot, and energy between people and that kind of thing. And so it was a different kind of thing because people tried to be honest with each other and work things out, which was good. It was a different way of doing things. And then we did have a meditation, much more informal. People would arrive whenever they wanted to. It was supposed to be around 10, but people would straggle in or come early or straggle in. And then it would last for maybe about an hour. And then Stephen would start an Om. And so the whole group of us would Om together, which were a few hundred people. And so that was always a nice thing to do with the group.
Yeah.
Because it was very, really nice.
That sounds great. Yeah.
It was terrific. And I was really interested in, and we put together this magazine called Hey Beatnik, and I was on that print shop crew. At the time we decided that we wouldn't put our names on anything because we were trying to be real pure and all that. So those of us that put that book together, and I'm actually the one that literally did put the book together because I was a paste up artist, so to speak. That was one of the things that I did on the farm and learned there. So we put the book together, and as soon as I decided that I wanted to go to Zen Center, I wanted to go study with Katagiri. And so as soon as I got that book put together, I went to Minnesota and lived across the street from Katagiri, like I said. And then when I went out to after that, 9 months later, to Zen Center, Katagiri came out, and Tomoe came out, his wife, and Chris Persig, who I knew.
Yeah.
Was out there. And Chris used to come over and visit me almost every day because I knew his parents from Minnesota.
So you were friends with the Piercings?
I was. Just to start with, when I left the farm, I went up to study with and practice with Katagiri, and the Piercings were there. And I had been working in graphic arts on the farm, so Robert Persig and I and a couple of other people put together the first newsletter for the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center for Katagiri, and that was really fun.
What year was that?
It must have been 75 or around then.
Well, 75 also the year you went to Sahara, but I remember you said you were only in Minnesota about 8 months.
Yeah, that's correct. So, so we did that, and I got to know Robert and Nancy Persig, and their sons, and Chris, of course. I met him because he was young at the time, younger than he was when he went to Zen Center. So I knew them, and we hung around together a little bit and worked together to put together the newsletter, and that was really fun to do. I enjoyed it. And then when I moved to San Francisco, Nancy came out, and Chris and Nancy and I would go out to the Japanese restaurant, which was really fun, and then we'd go visit other places, and so I was friends with them. And I haven't seen Nancy in a while. I've been thinking of looking her up. I looked her up before I moved 3 or 4 years ago. I contacted her, and she is in Florida. And then I wasn't able to visit her, but she was running this is after she and Robert had divorced. She was operating some kind of meditation center somewhere in North Florida, but I don't remember the location. And that's something I've been wanting to go back to and find her, and I haven't gotten to it yet.
Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Wendy Piercing, his next wife, works with us, and I communicate with her almost daily.
No, I didn't. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been a lot of help.
That's great. That's terrific. Good.
One thing I wanted to get clear was you copied a whole lot of Suzuki's lectures at Tassajara.
Yes.
Did you copy all of them?
I think I did.
Yeah. It was so extensive, it looked to me like you did. And that's really good to know, because then we know that no lectures were lost in the fire.
That's right.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
Yeah.
And, but, that was my way of learning more about Suzuki Roshi. I felt like if I sat and just copied everything that I could find, I would just learn as I went, and that it would make more of an impact on me, which was really important. But Chris used to come visit me when I lived in San Francisco after I got back from Tassajara.
Oh.
Chris Persig, he came over to visit me almost every day that he was there.
Wendy has a 100-page piece on Coop.com about her and Robert coming to Zen Center after Chris was murdered and staying like a month or so. You might find that interesting.
I am interested. I mean, I'm still upset about what happened to Chris.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It breaks my heart. Oh, maybe I'll look at that. Yeah, it just upsets me to even think about it, to be honest. It just, I went into Robert's book and read his account of it. I hadn't read that before, so that was just shocking. What's his most famous book?
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
I think it's in that one. Yeah, in that one. And I didn't have a...
Really? Oh, I read that book.
Yeah, I went back and got a copy, and I was looking specifically for that to see if he mentioned it, and he talks all through how it all occurred.
Really? Are you sure it wasn't somewhere else?
Yeah. Maybe it's another version that you're not aware of, but he gives an accounting of what happened, saying that these two black guys came by in their car, and one of them got out and got in front of Chris. The other one got out and got behind Chris, so he couldn't go anywhere.
Oh.
And then I think they asked him for money or something,
or
whatever. And
I think they just killed him.
Yeah, they killed him.
I didn't realize there were two.
Well, Robert's account was that there were two.
Yeah.
And that they worked together to make sure he couldn't get away.
Well, now that book came out in 1974, and Chris was killed in 79. So, that would be in a later edition of it.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. And anyway, so I have really fond memories of being at Zen Center and just being able to sit. I really love the Zendo at Zen Center and the Buddha Hall, and just the interesting mix of people there. It's very unique. It's unique because it's so accepting to so many different styles and types of people. I thought that was just remarkable and exhilarating. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
And even though we weren't talking a lot there, it was, I remember we had some kind of reunion at Zen Center, and I found out about it, and I went to it. It was huge. I don't know if you remember, there were a lot of people from everywhere.
Yeah, well, I helped organize it.
Oh, of course you did. Well, I had the best time, and I met people that I'd never met before who I wish I could have stayed in touch with, and I kind of wish that they would do that again or more often, so those of us who met so long ago, and even those of us who didn't but were there, could meet again. That was the most amazing thing. One of the best experiences that happened there, I thought. Yeah, I remember seeing Ed Brown's daughter Lycan when she was a grown daughter. That was kind of fun. And Ed had been, when I first came to Zen Center, I think before I went to Tassajara, I was in the building. I knew what happened. This is a story I really wanted to tell you. When I first got to Zen Center, I was told I could stay at the 191 Haight Street house, and I stayed over there, and I was at a party there within a couple of days where Tommy Dorsey was there.
Yeah.
And everybody was gathered together, and I don't know if I should say this or not if you're putting together something to publish, but people were smoking a pot, and they were passing a joint around.
There's no reason not to say that. Good Lord, don't hold back. You can say anything. Oh,
yeah, got it. So I was at 191 Haight Street, and they were smoking a joint, and I had just arrived, and I didn't know anybody, and I was feeling a little bit wide-eyed and starry-eyed or whatever. Here I am at San Francisco Zen Center. I don't know what I'm getting into, where I'm going, what I'm doing. I hadn't gone to Tassajara yet. It was over in and I was just going over to the building and sitting and then coming back to 191 Haight. And so there was a party going on, and they were passing a joint around, and somebody sitting next to Tommy, he takes the joint in his hand, and somebody next to him puts their elbow into him, and I'm sitting just a few people away, and they go, "You're not going to smoke in front of a new student, are you?" And so Tommy sticks his head out, and he looks at everybody in the circle. He looks all the way around, and he gets to me, and he looks at me for a few seconds, and he goes, "Her? She's not new." And then he smokes really fast and passes it.
Yeah. Well, I would add that there wasn't a lot of pot smoked at 191. That was just for the party. There was something there.
I know it was, but all I can say is it made me feel so very, very welcome.
Yeah.
And the way that he did it was intentionally to make me feel that way. And I knew that. I could, that man was the most loving person I think I've ever met in my life. And every time I saw him, I just felt so close to him immediately. I was so drawn to him because he was just so open, welcoming, loving, and fun to be around. He took us dancing in the Castro. And I had the best time. I'd never been in the Castro. And he took us bar hopping in the Castro. There were probably about 8 of us from 191 Haight Street. We all went with him. And we walked down, of course, to the Castro from there. And we partied out for one night. And I just never have forgotten it because it was so unusual, just so much fun.
It's neat.
And I was grateful to have gotten to meet him.
Yeah.
So, and then I went, all of a sudden I'm living down in the monastery in Tassajara, and it was an incredibly beautiful place, and I had never experienced anything quite like it. And the people there were very respectful of each other. I'd never tried to eat formal oryoki or any of the things before going there. Yeah. So it was all new to me. I had to learn all those things, as I went. But the people were really great. I mean, it was a wonderful experience, and it's fascinating that you get to know people, and you get to know them in silence rather than by talking. It's such an unusual experience, so different than most of our social ways that we have as a culture.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, very sort of special. You notice different things. You notice you're not listening so much to the content as the demeanor of people and the way that they walk, the way that they move. Those kinds of things become more vivid, in that type of environment. I still remember it so well partly because some of the priests would wear those what are those kind of shoes that are like, they stand up. They're like
Geta.
What are they called?
Geta.
What?
Geta.
Yeah, they were weird, and so I would always think it was kind of, strange to want to walk in those shoes. But
I hate Geta. Gee, I call them the wooden platform sandals that are very traditional in Japan. To like if it's raining to walk in. And some of the priests, Reb would wear Geta. Dick would wear Geta sometime. Who else?
Well, Philip did, and it was hilarious because
he was a bit
over, and so he'd have a little bit of a hard time on those shoes, and I'd be walking behind him going, oh, I'm hoping that he wouldn't fall.
Well, wearing Geta at Tassajara would be a very bad idea because it's very uneven. It's, oh God. Gee. Reb was wearing Geta at Green Gulch, and his office was on the sort of the balcony there, and he was coming down the central steps to the area outside of the Zendo, and he tripped and fell down.
Oh, God.
With the get it. Uh, I
If
just
you can
go,
trip and fall down on that kind of a floor, which is a very flat, shiny floor, you could fall down easily and not in an uneven surface, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Oh my God. You
But
see,
I never
get
saw
on
anybody fall.
stairs, on the steps. Wow.
I can't
Well,
imagine.
it's, like, uh, interesting somebody would want to do that. But, I had get up, but I don't know what I ever did with them. Horrors. And I don't, well, I can remember get up. I can't remember. I mean, I've worn them, but I just found it so impractical. And I like Zoris,
Me too. Yeah, I didn't think I would walk in those shoes. And like I said, Philip Whalen was a bit overweight, so he would wear those things, and I would worry about him when he would go by because I didn't want him,
Yeah.
concerned.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Well, hey, when you were
One
at the
time,
farm, they started off with all these buses, but they built buildings there, right?
well, the buses were for traveling around the country and taking, Stephen would do lectures at all these different cities about what was going on in the country, what we were going to do about it, what kind of lifestyle should we have to make things better, just all the different things that he thought that, he'd learned from other people being in the position he'd been in San Francisco. He'd say, well, I'm kind of people bounce things off me. So I learned from all these different people. And so he was older than us he used to be S.I. Hayakawa's teaching assistant in San Francisco State. And I guess he dropped out with, the hippies and, decided to kind of lead a group of us, and it was very, very interesting and a lot of fun to go on that trip.
Hayakawa was a linguist. Was Stephen Gaskin a linguist?
Apparently he was, to start with.
Far out. Well, but on the farm, were there did you all build buildings?
Oh yeah, we bought 1,000 acres, and it got bigger and bigger over time because people next door would sell, and then there was another piece of land next door that was the land that we landed on. That woman's land that gave us the property for $1 a year. That property got broken up into pieces, and so I own like 7.5 acres. It's completely out in the woods in Tennessee, right next to the farm. But I bought that property just to have, kind of just something to have and maybe give to my grandchildren.
Yeah. Now, was there? But did the community build buildings that were for the community?
Absolutely. When we first got there was one house there, and that was it. So over time, the first people that got to live in houses were couples with children, and so houses were built mostly for those people. And little by little, they were all housed. And eventually, what happened was those of us who were still single at the time, we ended up having like a whole commune of communes. So there'd be a group house. They were first we started out in tents. And we had the tents were set up off the ground by a couple of inches. And then we had old army tents and one after, 2 tents together to cause, for more warmth during the wintertime. And then after we were living in tents and everybody was housed, so to speak, in tents, the farm started building houses for families. And little by little, houses were built all around the farm. And now there's 5 different roads, and all the roads have houses on them. And people have their own gardens. And then there's a huge group garden also. And there's a lot of space there. There's 1,760 acres.
Yeah. And it was called the farm. There was a lot of farming going on.
Right, especially at first when we were trying to be communal, and we did the kind of things that you do as a collective. We would have a farming crew, and we would have all farm days. So even though there may have been other types of jobs all over the farm, we had welders, we had a motor pool that fixed cars, we had we started a print shop. We bought a print shop, and we bought all the printing presses and all that stuff that we could produce our own books and that kind of thing. And we had a laundromat, and our own laundromat had to be run by people. And so we had all these different things. People had jobs everywhere, but nobody was paid. We all bought food as a group, and so we shared what was bought was shared by the different group homes, and each group home would usually have married couples and single people living in that place. And so we shared the space, whatever space that was. Each one was different one than another.
Yeah.
And that's how it went. And so you could, if you didn't really like the place you were living, you could go and try to find another place to live, especially if you were a single person, because single people had a lot of energy and time. They weren't taking care of kids, so they could get a lot of work done.
Well, that's really interesting. And I know they did. They had a lot of businesses and things. I mean, there was one point where didn't they start doing some sort of importing from South America or something?
Well, what happened was some people went down to Guatemala. It was Guatemala. And in fact, Dennis Martin was one of the first ones who went. Dennis Martin was on the caravan, and he was one of us, so to speak, the early people that started the farm. He actually had been one of the early Mouseketeers on that program that everybody watched when we were kids. You know,
wow.
He was Dennis. You know, when they said they would all say their names one after another. You know, Mouseketeers. He was Dennis, and so Dennis Martin was with us. He was always a very unique person with a lot of drive, and so he was one of the main people down there because he was real into studying and assisting the indigenous peoples. So they were the Mayans, and so we were living among the Mayans in a camp and doing things to help them survive. Also, not only teaching or providing and trying to provide certain types of things, adding things to the diet, promoting them to eat beans, not just corn tortillas, and then doing farming with them. And we had people that could teach that to them. We had carpenters that helped teach them carpentry. And so we had this whole project going in Guatemala. So when I came back from Tassajara, I was asked by Stephen Gaskin's wife, Ina May, to go down, and she sent me down to Guatemala, and I get to live there for about 5 or 6 months. That was quite an experience.
Wow, well, that's interesting. Now, as the farm evolved, I mean, the farm is still there, still going, right?
Right. It's completely different.
Yeah.
It's not a collective anymore. It's more like a community where people live on a giant piece of land and have their own houses. And there's several businesses that are there, and some of the people work off the farm. And many of the originals left really and live in Northern California, Sebastopol, and practice Zazen with Bruce Fortin.
Yeah, I lived in Sebastopol for 6 years, and Bruce was there. I'd go sit with him sometimes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realize there were other people from the farm there. But you know, I've talked to a lot of people who were at the farm. I just forget, you know. I forget.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a whole community of them up there. So much so that they have a reunion for the farm in Sebastopol or around there somewhere, Petaluma or something. And so I went to that a couple of times. It was really fun. So yeah, it's a whole group of people. So they were some of the people that started the farm. A lot of them actually live up there.
Now, there was a point where one of Stephen Gaskin's daughters got hold of me, and there was a disagreement in the family or something about when he died, about his headstone, and she wanted to have the likeness of Suzuki's Sumi Circle on it or something like that. I have a whole thing on Cute.com about that, but also something. It was like there was some sort of split there that I can't remember exactly what. Do you know anything about that?
A split in their family, you mean?
I guess, yeah.
Well, there was Margaret was married to Stephen when the caravan happened, and Ina May and her husband, the four of them started a so-called four marriage, which was kind of an experiment back then, I guess you could say. It didn't work out very well, and so the women stayed, but one of the men left, and so that made it really rather bumpy. So.
So then Stephen had two wives.
Well, it was even more complicated than that because what happened at first, they had the four marriage, and then they met another couple that they liked, and they tried to do a six marriage. Now that didn't work well at all. One of the men immediately soon after that happened left, and so then Stephen had three wives and one other man. They were sharing a household like that. That didn't work very well either. Eventually, it worked out to where Stephen and Ina May lived together, and people lived in couples.
Yeah.
And not trying to do, because that never worked out very well at all. And Stephen, they gave rules to the farm starting on the caravan. He said, well, if you're sleeping together, you're engaged, and if you're pregnant, you're married. So people became a lot more careful at that point. People really were careful but a lot of people got married, and a lot of people had children, and the farms, when the farm started, houses were built, a school was built, there was people, running the school, there was a print shop built, and different businesses. There was a business to make small Geiger counters built, and that business is still operating today. My daughter and my son-in-law work there.
Far out.
Yeah, I have three grandchildren on the farm. One's 17, one's 18, and one is 8.
Wow.
Little girl, 2 teenage boys.
Wow.
And they grew up on the farm.
So you've had a continual relationship with both Zen Center and the farm in a sense. I mean, you've been in Florida, but...
That's correct. I visit both often, and I'm overdue for a trip to California now to go see the Wingers, especially. I want to go see Barbara and Michael.
You know where they're living.
I do. I've stayed in touch with Michael. When Mel died, I wanted to, have another priest to talk to when I was operating the Zen Center. So I sort of became Michael's student. And hanging around with him, and he gave me a type of permission to teach, and so that helped so that I could function and make the Zen Center in Tampa work a little better. So I never considered myself a Zen teacher. I never have. I just what I did was I found a way to focus people's attention after meditation on a subject that we could discuss, and not get into long discussions, but have a brief discussion, which could sometimes help people in different ways. I can't explain it exactly, but different subjects that might come up might include something like fear, or just, things that we all experience that somebody might have something to say about or tell their experience about, which would be useful for other people to hear. So just we'd have a brief talk like that, and then we would have coffee and tea and leave. So we had I just had a weekly group. It wasn't every day for Zazen, 2 periods of Zazen with Kenhin between, and then coffee and tea and baked goods. And then we would go and meet again the next week for another. And that worked very nicely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, what's your schedule now? What's your practice now?
Well, right now I'm between moving. I'm probably going to move here to Florida to live with Doug. And so I was going to try to start a group in Nashville where I moved to from the farm. I moved to the farm to live near my grandchildren, but my grandchildren were getting older, and I didn't get to spend all that much time with them, and I decided to move to Asheville. So I moved there, and then Doug and I met about a year ago at a farm reunion in Tennessee, and both of us had known each other for 50 years, and we have been together ever since as a couple. So that's nice. Why I'm in Florida. Yeah, that's why I'm in Florida, and he comes up to Asheville, but we're going to build a house down here near the Swanee River. And I'm hoping to go to Gainesville and start another small Zen center there that's a Soto Zen Center. When I had the Tampa Zen Center, I would ask one of the priests to come out from San Francisco every year, and I had a whole string of priests that came to Tampa Zen Center to do a weekend program. Jordan Thorne was one of them. Vicky
Austin.
Austin. Just a whole bunch of different. I can't remember everybody, but Ed Brown came once.
Oh, wonderful!
And that was interesting.
Yeah,
it was real interesting. He's quite a fellow, that's for sure. He's unique. And when I was living at Zen Center, back when I came back from Tassajara, way back in the early days, I was at Zen Center by myself, and he said, "Well, you want to go with me?" It was Christmas time, and I wasn't going back to Florida for Christmas, and he took me out to meet his parents, and I went with him and Lycan to go to his parents' house and have dinner for Christmas.
Oh,
it was very nice of him, I thought.
Yeah,
because I didn't want to be left there by myself. I didn't really know very many people, and actually the other thing Ed did, which was really, I'll never forget. I used to have migraines that were pretty severe, and he told me, he said, "Look, if you have another one of those, just come knock on my door." And so I did, and I was having one, and he just sat me down, and he just put his hands on my head and pressed into my head for I don't know how long it was, and my headache just went away. I was stunned. It took a little while, but he was so loving, and I know he has his quirks, but boy, I'm definitely a fan of his.
Yeah, he's told me other stories about helping people get over some illness or problem.
He's wonderful. I mean, in that way,
yeah.
I think that the way that he gives, the way he gives people, is very interesting.
Do you know about him? He can't teach at Zen Center anymore.
I was upset to hear that. I thought it was extreme. I thought it was not only extreme, unacceptable. That's how I felt about it. And I still do. I still feel that way about it. Yes, I do see his quirks. I understand his quirks. He was an orphan, for one thing, and he went through some rough times, I'm sure, emotionally as a child. Sometimes that affects you as an adult.
Yeah.
And so, I just think that, to do that to him, to say that, that's outrageous. That's my opinion. I think that to say, okay, you should not teach there for a while.
You should
way.
What?
I think they should have said you should not teach at Zen Center for a while, and let that be like a hand slap. You know what I mean?
For what? For what? A hand slap for what?
He kind of goes off on, he goes off into tangents, and he gets out there kind of, when he's talking.
Yeah, but I don't agree that he should get a hand slap.
You don't?
No, because they get a letter of complaint from somebody, and they didn't look at what he actually said or listened to it. It was, they could have just told him, "Oh, this person complained about this." There's some very touchy people, but I think Zen Center overreacted, and they took the complaint very seriously, but they didn't look at what he said, what he'd actually done. And that's on Cuke.com. If you want to go there, you can listen to it. It's only a few minutes.
I will.
Listen, no, you're right, Ed. I mean, they just got tired of Ed. There being some people who were upset. And I've heard him go on a jag in a lecture. I go, oh my God, why are you talking about this? But that's him. That's him. I mean, to me, the organization should be flexible enough to have somebody like that, and they can put up a warning, or they can tell people, well, maybe you shouldn't go to his lectures anymore or something.
That's right.
But he's very popular.
I agree with you. Oh, he definitely is. He's unique. He's unique. He is.
Yeah. They just he sort of makes waves, but actually with what they did has made more waves.
I agree. I was shocked to hear about that. I thought that was a bad decision.
Yeah, but anyway, institutions are going through a period, I think, of oversensitivity to over wokeness, sort of out of balance. Like your state, Florida, is going through a period of extreme out of balance of under wokeness.
That's right. Under wokeness is the way. Yeah, that's because we have this Republican legislature and this governor that's just, oh my goodness.
Overall in America now, there is an appreciation of, what's it called, DEI or something, diversity, and that. It's actually accepted by a majority of Americans. But, it just gets out of balance in some places and gets very irritating. And some people feel like things are being imposed on them. So I think it's natural in that sort of cultural change. But one thing that's happening in America is that the extreme opposition to America evolving it's become very powerful, and so you essentially now having about a third of the country making the decisions and controlling a tremendous amount of the discussion on it and everything. But we'll see what happens.
We live close. We live in this place called Old Town. It's 45 minutes away from Gainesville, which is the larger town nearby. But we're kind of in the woods here. We're close to the Swanee River, and there's lots of trees and owls and birds and of all kinds and critters of all kinds. And Doug has 5 acres, and so we're in a little house in the middle of 5 acres near the Swanee River. It's like old Florida, but they haven't chopped everything down here yet, and I hope they don't. But so it's unique in that respect. You'll have to come visit. We'll take you out in the boat.
I'm going to Germany. Richard Baker's stepping down, and his Nicole Baden is becoming the abbot and taking charge of both Dharma Sangha, Germany and America. So I'm going to go there for a month in Germany for that. But
I'd like to see Richard. I haven't seen Richard Roshi, Baker Roshi. I really would. I had a very good relationship with him. I'd love to see him. I thought he was in Colorado.
Well, he's in Colorado in the winter, and he's in Germany in He's in Germany half the year, in Colorado half the year. I think he's in Germany more than half the year because it's really a much more vibrant organization and everything. Creststone in America is always barely just getting by, and it doesn't have the support that the German one does. But it's good. I like going to Creststone too. It's
now, doesn't Steve Allen have a place next door too, or something?
Yeah, he has the Dharmasanga place. Baker's place is on the mountain, and Steve Allen's place is on the flat below, and it's beautiful.
Oh.
It's beautiful. It's very large. It's very nice, and it also has a very, very small membership.
That's interesting. I only know about those, but I've never visited. But I've been feeling like that at this time of my life, I'd like to see Richard Baker again if I could. I thought maybe if he's in Creststone in the winter, that might be the time to go visit.
You don't have to wait till the absolute dead winter. I cut out a bunch here where we talk about Germany and going to Johanneshof, Richard Baker's place there. So then she says,
what if you just speak English, you don't speak any other language?
Oh, well, you can get by. There's a lot of English there. There's more English here than there is there, but you can get by with just English. People will help you, and you get the name of something. I try to learn enough German to ask directions, and but German's hard, so I don't know.
Seems like it would be. I learned Spanish in Guatemala when I lived there pretty well, but I never learned any other language. When I was living down in that with Plenty International, the farms corporation, we got to watch a volcano go off. It was really
wow.
So that was we were staying on this in the Finca old farmhouse on a mountain, one mountain over from the mountain that blew, the top blew. It was called Mount Fuego, and it was on Lake Atitlan, which is one of the deepest lakes in the world. That lake is surrounded by 3 volcanoes, and Fuego was the one that's active. And so we left our first camp, which was in Chimaltenango, and we went to up to the lake to Sololá, where we were living, where our new camp was going to be near that tribe of Indians. And that very night, we had several earthquakes during the day, but that night the thing blew its stack, and I've never seen anything. I felt like I was in a movie. It was really amazing.
Wow. Wow, that's some experience.
Oh, my God.
We've got an active volcano here in Bali.
Oh, gosh.
It can disrupt things.
How far from you is it? Are you far from it?
A couple hours by car.
That's kind of close. That's probably close.
Well, I'd say it depends on the traffic. The roads here are very narrow, and so the traffic can be awful slow. But it was going off last, 6 years ago, and it a couple 100,000 people had to get away, become refugees until it stopped. There'd be, and also generally the winds from it don't blow in our direction, so the airport doesn't have to close. The airport here is closed more from a volcano over in the next island, Lombok. We're between Lombok and Java.
I just remember we were able to stand there. First, the night we got to the new camp on Lake Atitlan, we had, during the night, we were in this old finca, old farmhouse, and all of a sudden there was a whoosh like that, and the house shook just a little bit. And the Indians that were living with us or staying with us, they shot right out the windows right then. And I remember I kind of stayed in bed thinking, what was that? I didn't quite get it. I was real sleepy. And then there was another one. And that time I shot out the window too. We stayed that whole day out we didn't go back into the building because we had 15 earthquakes. And then that night, the next volcano, which was only one mountain over, just blew its stack and just shot boulders straight up in the air. And we watched them roll down in the lava. It was like, we were far enough away, but it seemed kind of close. You know what I mean?
Wow.
It was shocking. It was like, my God, this is like being in a movie. It was
wow.
Something. Yeah, that was a great experience. I went home with one of the Indians women that had come to our camp. We had a clinic, but they didn't have any kind of healthcare services at all because the government in Guatemala are made of Latinos and they don't like the Mayans. And so the Mayans live way out in the land, far out, and they have to get by on their own. So we were out, pretty far out, and we had some of the Indians with us, and so they would give us a clue as to how far to go. We'd walk going toward a volcano, and which volcano might be, active and which volcano is inactive for years and years. So it was a great experience to get to go to a country like that and work with children that were malnourished and really see things like kwashiorkor and marasmus, those are the two things. One is a true calorie deficiency and the other is a protein deficiency. And to actually see that with your own eyes. I was an RN. I've been an RN now for 36 years and an attorney for 30. So I've seen lots of things, but not like living down there. That was, I don't want to have to see that again,
Wow. You were an attorney?
I am an attorney.
Wow.
I practiced law for 30 years.
Oh, my. Well, where'd you go to school? Where'd you get your degree?
Florida State. I first got my associate degree in nursing in 1984 in Tampa at a community college. Then I got my bachelor's at Florida State a year and a half after that in 86 because I only had to take a few courses to finish a bachelor's degree. And then I worked in nursing for a while. And then I went to law school. I think it was 89 and graduated in 92.
My.
And then I practiced law. Yeah.
What type of law? What type of law did you do?
I started out doing medical malpractice litigation because I was medically and legally trained.
Yeah. And
so I was good at that, but it's very tense and it's a very tense type of practice. While I was doing that, you can't do that kind of practice as a sole practitioner. So I was working with somebody else, and that person I was working with turned out not to be very honest. So as things went along, I started doing some administrative work also, which is license defense work before the Board of Nursing, Medicine, and Dentistry in Florida. And so I just made a practice out of that, and I got out of working with the other guy, and I took my law practice home to my own home. I had my own law office in my home, and I practiced license defense work for doctors, nurses, and dentists before the regulatory boards. And I would just have to fly to Miami or Jacksonville or Orlando or someplace and go with my client before the board and we work things out as to how to, what kind of things to say to be protective of their license and to get the smallest penalty or to have the case dismissed, one or the other. And so that's what I did with my law practice for 30 years.
Wow.
And I've just retired about a year and a half ago.
My. Yeah, I think I used to know that. I've forgotten.
I'll be 75 in November. How old are you?
79.
Oh, you're only a couple of years older. 4.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty good. Well,
yeah,
you're certainly active. You're getting ready to start another group, and that's really good. I'm glad to see you're pretty spry. I'll say that. You're
Well, I think it's important to have a group to sit with, and
yeah.
I like the Soto lineage. I like Shunryu Suzuki's lineage, and I feel like I feel almost a responsibility to share it with people if I can, and
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about having an abusive childhood.
Yes.
That was like the entire childhood, or what?
My father left my mother when I was about 5, and she married this man from West Virginia who was I just call him a redneck. I mean, he and I were like oil and water. We just had nothing in common. And he did a lot of physical abuse to me. He would slam me against walls and hit me and punch me and bruise me, and he hit me so hard it cut me, and just it was a miserable childhood. I mean, with he'd hit me so hard I would bleed, just stuff like that. And then I wasn't allowed to tell my mother, so I lived to escape from the time I was about 8 or 9. But she married him when I was about 7 or 8. I don't remember exactly. But he made my life miserable as a child. So I always thought there must be something better. There must be something better. I just lived to escape. And so I went to college as soon as I could, not to get to college, but to get away from him. And so I did 3 years at Florida State. I really didn't care about my degree. And after that, he had another episode that I was, where he wanted to be violent toward me when I was 19. And I said, okay, I've had enough of this. And I had somebody drive me to the bus station in Valdosta. I think I told you. So I took a train all the way to Chicago, and then
right. Did you ever go back and deal with him, or have you see him later?
I did. I didn't talk to them for a couple of years, but then I ended up having a child by myself. Her father and I did not get married, and I felt like I wanted my daughter to have a grandmother, and my daughter was exposed to both of them. He didn't hurt her or anything, but he was never all that nice to me. So that was how it went. And so, but anyway, yeah. I mean, I have to say, my stepfather was the reason that I left and the reason that I got to be at Zen Center. So I don't respect what he did to me. He was not a nice man. He was violent, and he was, like I said, I lived to escape. But back in those days, I was living in Tampa. We lived a half a block from a lake full of alligators, and nobody thought anything of it. I'm a native Floridian, and I mean, my whole family were the first settlers in Florida, and so alligators were just, people would have them walk into their yards, make a nest in their yard. Nobody would think anything of it. That was old Florida.
Wow.
It's kind of like that here, but there's not gators in people's yards here that I've seen anyway.
Wow.
We run into them on the Swanee River. You'll have to come go out in the boat with us sometime.
Wow. Wow, that's something. We have monitor lizards here that can get really big. They're not dangerous though. I mean, people even have them as pets. They eat them. They're all over Southeast Asia. But you don't want to get bitten by one. I mean, you can, because they have, you can get infections really bad by that from them.
Oh, God.
But I love seeing, we don't have them near where we're living now. I have seen them in this area, but not in recent years. And, but I've seen some really big ones. I love seeing them, but they get away. They run away from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to swim in places where there were water moccasins in Texas. I was used to that, but boy, I sure wouldn't go into the water where there were alligators.
Well, we did. I grew up around them, but the lake that was my house, we did not go in that lake. It was a small lake full of alligators. But both my grandparents had property north of Tampa, and both of them were living on a lake. And in the lake, there were alligators in the lake, but they would stay on the other side of the lake usually. And when I was a child, what happens is when the gators come towards you, they come up and kind of look. They look at you above the water, and then they go back down and come towards you some more. So whenever we'd see a gator come, we'd say, "Alligator," and everybody would jump out of the water, and we'd go up and wait till the gator went away and go back in the water again. We never got bit at all. They never came around right up close to us that we knew of, anyway.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Well, my prior wife, Elin, her great grandfather was the Supreme Court Justice of Florida for decades or something, and so
oh my God!
I guess her grandfather, on her mother's side, was from Florida, and but they're Atlanta. They were Atlanta people, and so when she and I were first together, there was a big family reunion at this giant spring in the Panhandle of Florida, and it's where the and there's the Everglades are there. It's where the creature from the Black Lagoon was made, in Tarzan movies were made there.
Yeah.
And there was this.
That's close by to here. Yeah.
What's it called? Can you remember?
Blue Spring.
Huh?
Blue Spring, I think, or Blue Hole. That's one.
Well, this is like there's a whole river comes out of this spring. It's enormous.
Oh, that's right.
Huh?
Yeah. And there's Wakulla.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Wakulla Springs. Yeah. Yeah.
And we stayed in a beautiful old hotel there, very big, and but now why am I telling you this? There's some reason. Because
there were lots of alligators there.
Oh, that's why. Somebody had been taken off by an alligator.
That's right. Well, at Wakulla, what they do is they have a net, or like a metal screen that goes down into the water to the ground, and the gators end up piling a whole bunch of them right outside that, right in the river itself as it goes down. But at the right where Wakulla is, I mean, there are a ton of gators all in one spot there.
I think when we were there was like 85, and it was too early. It could have been 86. It was too. I think they did not have that yet, and they'd never had a problem.
No.
But I think after that wasn't long before we were there that had happened. That a gator had come taking somebody off. They had glass bottom boat tours from there.
That's right, they do.
Yeah, that was neat. I went on one. I loved that place. Wow.
Me too. It's really nice, and there's a lot of wonderful places and water places around here. Like I said, we're close to the Swanee River.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. We don't go in it to swim because there are alligators in the river. There are here and there. And there's big, big fish. I forget what they're called. They're some kind of big fish. They jump all the time. And but we go out in the boat and go for a distance down the way. And one time, Doug ran into a Florida panther. I mean, like face to face by accident.
Wow.
He was in his boat. He went into one of these canals, and he's drifting down into the canal. And as he's going, his boat's heading toward a spot, on the land. And all of a sudden, as his boat goes further, all of a sudden he realized he was coming right toward a Florida panther, a big one that was just sitting there looking straight at him.
Whoa. Whoa.
And he said he just kept looking at it, and he said that he got the boat to start going backwards instead of forwards finally, and the cat just got up and turned around and walked away. He was lucky.
Wow. Yeah. And of course, Florida is famous for the, do they have pythons or boa constrictors are South America, but all these pet pythons have gotten out.
They have. They're down in the Everglades.
Yeah, it's a big problem, I hear.
It's a huge problem, and they have just exploded. They're all over the Everglades.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, those snakes sometimes eat the gators, and sometimes the gators eat the snakes. It's real weird, and but they're out of control.
Yeah, yeah.
What I
there are
heard.
pythons here. There was at the Hyatt Hotel when we first came here, almost 11 years ago. The Hyatt Hotel had just closed for a remodeling, and a couple of the workers got this rather large python somewhere, and one of them put it over his head to carry, and it started strangling him, and the other one was afraid to help him, and so it killed him.
Oh my!
Yeah, they could have easily, the two of them, taken care of it, but
God. Yeah, one of those. My former husband lives in Tampa, and I was living there a few years ago. One of his friends had this. We went to visit. They had this snake in a room by itself, a great big, and I mean thick, 4 inches wide, 4 or 5 inches wide snake, very big one. They had a room for it to live in. I thought, this is so weird. And then some months after, we went there to visit, and I was just totally freaked out by that snake. I couldn't believe it. It turns out that the husband came home, and the woman had walked in to, I guess, feed the snake, and the snake had just wrapped itself around her, all the way around her, and was trying to squeeze her and kill her, and then it was going to eat her.
Right. So what happened?
Well, he killed the snake, right? The
husband came home and found that and killed it. Yeah, that's really dumb.
Really dumb.
God.
Really dumb. Just awful, really.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you do that to the animal? The animal doesn't belong in a room, in a house.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm glad that it didn't eat his wife. There was a guy in it might have been Malaysia. This was just in the news. I don't know, like 10 years ago or something. Who a python was eating him, and he was in a tree. And he was a really small guy, and the python was swallowing him. But he had a smartphone, and well, maybe anyway, he had a phone, and he called, and people came and saved him. But he was,
oh my God,
he was being swallowed.
Oh my God!
But it hadn't strangled him or anything.
God.
So, yeah.
Well, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
That's so bizarre.
Well, we've got spitting cobras. They're more dangerous than the python. I'm not worried about pythons. Most of them aren't that big.
They can blind you if they spit in your face, can't they?
Yes, they can, but that's only if you rub your eyes. They can spit 2 meters. And if spitting cobra, they won't do it if you don't bother them. It's like if you trip on one. Most the bites here from cobras are from people walking at night and stepping on one or something. They won't bother you if you're not, near them. But I've talked to a couple of snake experts here. If you get a snake in your yard and you're not sure, you can call them, they'll come get it, and take it to the right place. And one of them lives very close to us. But another one, he's a famous snake guy here. He's from, England. The other one's from India. Anyway, he said he has snakes, and he said last year, finally, and he's an older guy, he said, spitting cobra spit in his eyes. He said, you just don't rub your eyes. That's what
Oh,
blinds you. He said
I had no idea.
he got a hose and ran the hose into his eyes for about an hour.
Yeah,
And then he went
of
to an
course.
eye doctor, and the
Yeah.
eye doctor said he'd gotten it all and everything was all right. But, the eye
Yeah.
doctor, did more. But, people go blind from rubbing their eyes when that happens.
Oh, gosh.
You want to get it out of there, though. You want to wash it.
Yeah.
Well, our gardener, killed a cobra in our garden, but it wasn't a cobra. I took a photo of it, and Santos said, "No, that's a cat tooth rat snake."
That's not a poison one.
No, you want them. They're good. They're not your enemy. The rats and mice are your enemy.
Yeah, that's right. Well, people are afraid of snakes as it goes, But in Florida, we even have coral snakes here and there. And my grandmother we saw coral snakes on her property. But of course, they have tiny little mouths and they have to get you like between your toes or something, or between your fingers.
Right.
So that's a good thing. But we were always so afraid of coral snakes.
Yeah, we had coral snakes in Texas. I've seen coral snakes in the alley behind my home where we grew up. And they are very small, and but they're very poisonous. You really don't want to get bitten by one.
No, you don't. Not.
We had all 4 poisonous snakes: rattlesnake, water moccasin, coral, and what's the other one? The copperhead. Pardon me, copperhead.
Oh, copperhead. Oh boy, we have those here too.
Yeah, they're less poisonous, I think.
Yeah, I hope so. But I think they're pretty poison. I mean, I guess a rattlesnake can kill you, but
it depends on what type. And I mean, any of them can kill you, but the ones, further north that attack the blood system, they're less dangerous. It's when you get into the hotter areas and they have a poison that attacks the nervous system. They're much more poisonous. Around Tassajara there, a woman was bitten by a rattlesnake, a guest, and, she was flown out in a helicopter, but she lived. And most people in America who get bitten by rattlesnakes live.
It's funny, I forgot to tell you, when I was living at Tassajara, my job was, of course, cleaning the baths. I used to have to clean clean scorpions and tarantulas out of the bathtubs there every single day, especially scorpions. I mean, I never saw so many different types of scorpions. My gosh.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, every single day they must walk through the baths at night, and they would drop into the tub, which was like from the ground down, and they couldn't get out because the walls were tile and going straight up. So I would have to pick those darn scorpions or get something to scoop them out of there, and I did that every day. I mean, they were in the bathtubs every day.
I've never heard that. That's amazing. Tarantulas you can pick up.
Right, but the scorpions I had to scoop something like I forget what I used, but I wasn't going to touch them, so I scooped them. I'd take them and throw them further away from the bath.
I wouldn't pick up a tarantula, but I knew people that did in Texas.
I let one walk on my hand at Tassajara. I was just because I've always loved spiders, so I'm watching him. So I just put my hand down in front of him and see what he would do, and he just goes dun 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 with his feet dun 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 onto my hand. Then all of a sudden he stops, and then he realized he's on my hand. I just held really still, and he just went backward dun 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 dun, got off my hand. That was what he did. It was
wow.
I guess maybe it was dumb to do that. I don't know, but I was
No,
curious.
it was cool. It was cool. They can bite, but like the way you did it.
I just held still.
I've seen people, if they're being gentle and everything, hold tarantulas. And I was sitting in the Zendo at Tassajara by that, the sort of access screen door on the side and front. Oh, yeah, in the old Zendo, the one that burned.
Yeah.
And
that was the one
I had both. I had a scorpion walk in one night while I was listening to Suzuki's lecture, and I caught it with my oryoki. I covered it with the oryoki bowl and took it out. And then the next night, I had this happen 3 nights in a row. The next night, a tarantula walked in.
Oh my God.
And, I was less frightened of the tarantula than the scorpion, but I had to use the big bowl for him. But there was God. The first night, it was something like, I don't know. I can't remember. It was like a big beetle or a millipede or something that wasn't dangerous.
I had experiences in the old Zendo. One of them was I felt real faint one time. I felt like I was going to faint. And I don't know why I felt that way. I just started I felt like I was going to just lose consciousness. And so I stupidly got up thinking I should get out of the Zendo. So I got up, which was the wrong thing to do. And as I walked toward the back, right in front of the Buddha drum, I just collapsed. I fainted. And I remember Steve Weintraub comes running up to me, and he's looking at me, and he's going, because I had some kind of medical training. I think I was in EMT or something before I went to Tassajara. So I was keeping the box with all the medical equipment in my room at Tassajara. And so Steve Weintraub stands over me and he goes, "Ask Suzanne, she'll know what to do." And I'm coming back totally fainted. And, I'm coming back out of being completely gone. And all he's saying this stuff, and I'm going, I couldn't help but smile as I came to. It was really funny. I never fainted like that again. I don't know why. I'm not sure why it happened, but that was interesting. Experience. I thought he was a good teacher and a good priest. I liked him a lot.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. So yeah, I miss getting to Zen Center. I'm hoping to get to go out sometime soon and take Doug. He's never been to a Zen Center, and I know the city center is going to close down, I guess, for renovation soon. I'm not sure when.
Yeah.
But also, I'm going to go see the Wingers and take them things and see what I can do to. I'd like to help try to make their lives a little bit easier. Barbara, it's real hard on Barbara because Michael's so far gone now with his disease.
Yeah.
I stay in touch with them and do things to help them out.
That's nice.
I'm trying, to help take care of Michael. He's certainly, been a wonderful teacher for a lot of people. And, I'm glad that they have a nice place there.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I've seen a picture of it.
Yeah.
I don't know it.
Yeah, it's really formidable. It's really something.
Is it?
I haven't been there, of course, but it's like there's a number of buildings and big saltwater swimming pool and room to walk, and they're building a dog park, and there's
You're kidding.
I was talking to somebody who lives on the 4th floor of one of the buildings, and there's I don't know how many people there, and they all like it. Everybody's
cool.
Inso it's called.
Yeah, Inso. That's right, Inso Village.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, look.
I think.
Yeah, go on.
No, I just think it's wonderful. I'm glad they have that, and that's a wonderful way to take care of the people that served others for so long.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's too bad. Zen Center can only afford to support so many people like that. Yeah, I don't. I was talking to Susan O'Connell, who was the instigator and the power behind it, the whole creation of it, and now they're doing one in Southern California, and Zen Center is an owner. It's one of the owners, and it's investing in one in Southern California, and anyway. It's really, really something.
I guess they can take insurance that people have, and that way it can help pay for it, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't understand the financing of it. It's complicated. Yeah. But
it must be.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, hey, I see here the copperhead is a pit viper, and it's the least poisonous pit viper. Its snake bite from a copperhead can range from mild to severe, but are rarely fatal. It says among the lowest of all pit vipers.
That's interesting.
Anyway, you don't want to get bitten by one.
I don't.
Okay, look, we've been talking a couple hours. It's been really interesting. I've really appreciated hearing all that you have shared. It's really
it's kind of
pretty
it's
impressive.
Kind of a fun.
It's what?
It's a fun story. It's a fun story.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy for you. That's good. And so keep me in touch with how the story continues.
I will. And like I said, I mean, I'm not joking when I say if you'd like to visit us sometimes, we're going to have a house close by here, and we have a boat, and the Swanee River's right here, and the weather's not too bad, and it's out of town. And if you're in the States and you want to come visit and bring your wife, we have a place, another house that belongs to Doug's family that's right down the road that, has a bedrooms and bathrooms and a kitchen, and it's usually empty. So
yeah, we'll be there pretty soon. We're just going to move in.
You might like it. You might decide to stay here. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, it's very fun to talk to you, David, and I appreciate all of your work that you've done and everything you've done for Suzuki Roshi, and to get his teachings out is so important. And so I'm really proud to know you, and so glad to get to talk to you.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you've done, and remember that. I've really enjoyed talking with you. Yeah, it's been neat.
Well, yeah, I'd like to stay in touch.
Yeah, well, you take care of Florida now. They need help.
They do. No question about it.
Yeah.
I was a registered lobbyist here in Florida, but I was lobbying for the midwives in Florida some time ago.
Oh, is that right? Is that right?
My work on midwifery was, I forgot to tell you this, my work on midwifery was published at Yale in 1993. So I became famous in the midwife communities around the country. So I got to travel around and teach at midwife conferences. And so I've stayed in touch with that to some extent, but I don't really do too much of it anymore because I'm getting old, and I like to stay, and I don't like to travel around a lot.
Yeah. Of course, the farm had a big midwifery trip going, and they published a book on it.
Well, yeah, several, and Ina May was known for that. But I, when I left the farm and went to law school, I started writing an article about midwifery and the law, and like I said, my work was published at Yale in '93. It's called Midwifery is Not the Practice of Medicine. And I named it that because it's a political statement, because midwives are usually, physicians want to control them and force them to do medical births, but midwives don't do medical births. They do midwife births, which are more natural births where the woman has more rights to make choices about her birth. And they have a real high safety record. So I got real interested in it, and I spent a lot of time writing and ended up my work getting published. So that was probably one of my highlights that I probably should have, told you and kind of slipped my mind.
Yeah.
I'm getting old.
Yeah, that's neat. But both my sons were delivered by midwives.
Yeah. So
one at Green Gulch and one in Japan.
In Japan, great.
Japan's very good on midwives and birthing. It's the norm there. It's you can do anything. You can.
Yeah.
I had a woman student whose doctor gave her a drug to make her have a baby quick so he wouldn't miss his golf game. And you can. You can go from our choices were only midwives. They're not very far from where we live. There were a couple of midwives that delivered babies there, but we went to a place that was a birthing center owned by a doctor. But
I know
he
was that in New Mexico?
No, it's in Japan.
Oh, Japan.
And but midwives delivered the babies and did everything, and the doctor was just there if there was some complication where he was needed.
That's very good way to do it. That's the best.
And the head midwife was his lover.
Oh.
And she really encouraged. What was cool was when Elin and I met with her, she said, it's really important you keep having sex through your pregnancy. And we did. That was great. I appreciated that.
That was probably true also, actually. So.
Yeah. And Elin was 2 weeks late. So we used sex to bring on the birth.
The midwife
bring on labor.
The midwife teach that on the farm. Actually. I've been familiar with some of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stories.
Oh yeah, man, she wore me out because she really wanted to have the baby. Really, that was.
Well, it's a good way to get worn out, I would say.
Yeah, I know. And all right, so the baby's delivered there. We have a private room, and stay there 3 days.
Wow, that's nice.
And there's classes with women on breastfeeding and stuff. And Japan's opposite from almost everywhere. Like they're great on that. They're terrible on a lot of things, but they're really good on birthing.
That's wonderful. I've had a number of clients who are midwives, and I've protected them. My last big trial was for a nurse midwife who was a home birth midwife, and the state of Florida went after her for some stupid thing that they had no clue what they were talking about, and I won the case completely by a trial. We had a 2-day trial in North Florida, and I had all of the charges against her dismissed. But it was a hard fought one, but it was worth it.
Yeah. The midwives, have been persecuted. The doctors in Point Reyes that were doing home births that delivered Kelly at Green Gulch, they got to be where. Wint, who founded it, he just got to be where he absolutely hated lawyers, because anything that went wrong, they could get sued for, and the law. They really weren't protected by the law, and they had better statistics than hospital births.
Of course they did. That's what the hospitals and the doctors don't want to have gotten out to the public. That's what keeps midwifery from really being able to come up in the world, so to speak. And it really should be part of a good healthcare system. Midwives should be part of it, but they try to push them out and keep them out. So that's been because It's a financial threat is what it really is. It's all about money.
Yeah. The first thing I asked both places at both times was what's your percentage of cesareans?
Uh-huh.
And that's really key. If you hear 5%, that's really low. That's good.
Yeah.
I
think I may get, on the farm, I think the midwives had something like 1% or 2%.
I've heard of 2%.
Yeah.
There was a guy like in San Diego or somewhere that had it really low.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I'm glad we didn't end our conversation when we started to end it, and I got to hear all that.
Yeah. Well, I hope.
All right.
That, I have to go back and look at several things on Keep.com. I'm going to do that, and hope I get to see you sometime down the line. Maybe at Zen Center or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I sure hope that Trump doesn't get elected. Boy, we are in trouble if he does. Big shit trouble.
That's true, but we're in trouble no matter what happens.
That's true. That's true.
Like, what do you think about climate change?
Well, I mean, we are in the throes of it. My partner, Doug, invented one of the first electric cars that was ever invented. He did that on the farm. And then he had a company that was making them. And then Nissan came and interviewed him and took all his ideas and didn't pay him anything. And then, and so electric cars have become the thing now. But we've been interested in and the effects of climate change for quite a while and trying to prepare and educate people.
Yeah.
It's a lot caused by cows. I mean.
Yeah, that's true.
Layer and
that's true.
We're raising all these cows to eat them when in fact
ozone, not ozone.
No, I mean, the wrong.
You mean the carbon dioxide and methane?
Right, that's right.
Well, at least the methane has a shorter half-life.
Doug does a lot of solar stuff, and we're getting ready to build a house. We're going to put in as much solar as we possibly can to run as many things as possible. And he has some of it here in this older kind of cabin that he has built on this property. So we have, our water is completely heated by solar.
Yeah. Well, good for you. That's good.
Yeah.
It's my view of it is I want somebody to show me that every good deed we're doing, and I do lots of good deeds like that. We try to live as lightly as we can, and we compost and everything. But I put it all in the arranging deck chairs on the Titanic category.
Well, I certainly understand what you're saying. I do. I mean, it's really it's frightening. It really is, because look what's happening already.
Yeah.
Storms are out of control. Storms that are coming through that they've never seen anything like it before. Andrew, that just leveled the whole bottom part of Florida all across the state. Stuff like that. I mean, that's very frightening. It really is. So I guess we have to do what we can do while we're alive, David.
This sort of discussion frequently comes down to it's like the Bodhisattva's vow.
Right.
He vowed to save all beings. It's impossible. Dogen would take his wash water and what was left, of course it wasn't full of dangerous chemicals, and he'd return it to the creek. That was not anything that mattered in terms of the practical, but it was just like doing the right thing without thinking about only doing things that are going to make a difference.
I try to stay in touch with Tigan Dan Layton in Chicago. I was friends with him in San Francisco, and I have a lot of respect for him. And I haven't seen him for a while.
Yeah.
And I try to stay in touch with Pat Phelan also. I've gone to her center a few times for like a weekend work.
Oh yeah.
And then I had Galen Godwin came to Tampa Zen Center when I was operating that for a weekend. That was really nice to have her. And so
Wow.
Yeah. So I've gotten to hang around with people that I really respect.
Yeah.
Like, so.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
But take care.
Okay.
Let me know if I can ever do
really
anything to help you. I'd love to stay in touch.
All right. I'll think about that.
Yeah. You have a lot of things.
Okay.
I'm not expecting anything. Don't worry. So take care of yourself.
You too. It's been good talking with you.
See you, David.
Bye-bye. So thanks a lot, Suzanne. That was, you've done quite a bit. And now you're thinking of starting another sitting group. Well, more power to you. That's really great. Oh, I want to say one thing. Last week I made a mistake. And in the podcast with David Weinstein, and I said that I was talking about the relationship of Jerry Brown, former Governor Jerry Brown, with the teachers in the Pacific Zen Institute, and John Joseph and David Weinstein were with Jerry Brown in Kamakura in Japan, practicing Zen with Koen Yamada. But and I said John Tarrant was there too. But no, John Tarrant didn't go to Japan. He knew Jerry Brown at the Hawaii Aikens Zendo in Hawaii. So now we've got that clear. I could go back and fix that on the audio, but I don't think I will. Maybe. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, and we're coming to you from Sleepy Senor with Doggett Bandita, Feline Manecita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.